Alrighty, so here we have the cat's wet food. This is their current food that they're used to eating, which is duck. And then this is ground raw duck, meat, bones, and organs. So we're going to see which one they go for first. So here we go for Griffin. And here we go for Ash. They're smelling both. Griffin went for wet. Ash went for raw. So right now we're 1 for 1. Come on, Gracie. She's smelling both. And she's like, why are you filming me? Go ahead, Gracie. Oh, Gracie went for wet food first. Let's see which one Charlie goes for first. Oh, Charlie went for raw first. So 2 for 2. Oh, Griffin's going for raw now. And he goes back to wet as soon as I say something. Ash hasn't even touched his wet food yet. He's just going for raw. He started eating raw. So she still has some wet food left. Looks almost about the same that I put out on the dish. But now she's choosing raw. It looks like Ash is going back for wet. After he licked it clean. No more raw. And Griffin's still working on his wet food and has mostly raw left. Let's see Charlie. Charlie, you licked your plate clean from the raw and left the wet. Oh, Ash is walking away from wet food. Ash, do you want a little more raw? Oh, there we go. And he goes for raw. And Griffin's making a mess with his raw now. Gracie's almost done with her raw. She ate more raw than wet, even though she went for the wet food first. Are you done, Charlie? Are you done, Charlie? Hey friends, it's Jess and Griffin, Ash, Gracie, and Charlie. First, let's compare the nutritional analysis and the composition of wet versus raw. Right off the bat, raw food has a much more simple ingredient list, and canned food, wet canned food, has a much longer and more complicated ingredients list. So for the raw ingredients, this specific ground duck is 54% boneless ground duck with skin, 25% duck wings bone in with skin, 10% duck liver, 5% duck heart, 5% duck gizzard, and 1% duck neck skinless. So right here we have a lot of variety in the raw meaty bones that they're using, the muscle meat like heart and gizzard, and one secreting organ, which is liver. Now that is a con because variety is key and you want to have as many secreting organs as possible. But frankly, with many wet cat foods and even raw foods, especially with duck, liver is likely going to be the only secreting organ that you see anyway. With the wet canned food ingredients, we have duck, turkey liver, duck broth, ground flaxseed, clay, peas, carrots, salt, and many of the ingredients are all synthetic vitamins and minerals, plus Menhaden fish oil, artichokes, cranberries, pumpkin, tomato, blueberries, broccoli, cabbage, kale, and parsley. So with raw, we have 6 ingredients. They're all simple, easy to read. We know exactly what they are, and they're very specific. With the wet canned food, we have over 25 ingredients, most of which are synthetic supplements and minerals. The other big difference here is that the raw food is raw and fresh, and that's exactly what the cat is designed to eat. Cats in the wild don't cook their mice and birds. They catch them, kill them, and eat them immediately. So it's fresh and it's raw. Whereas wet canned food is cooked, processed, it's pressurized, it's got a nice goo in there to hold everything together. It's got all these added nutrients, and it's just not, it's the exact opposite of what the cat would eat in the wild. Give me a polydactyl thumbs up if this is helpful so far, so more cat parents wondering if they should feed wet or raw can find this video. Thank you so much. Now, I'm sure a concern that you might have with raw is bacteria. specifically salmonella, because a lot of us have been trained to fear bacteria and fear salmonella. But even the FDA says that salmonellosis is uncommon in cats and dogs. And maybe your vet has even said to you that the CDC advises against raw feeding, but on the CDC's page about that, they also say that canned foods can be contaminated with germs. Additionally, wet pet food has been recalled for many different reasons in the past 10 years. These reasons include excessive levels of vitamins, which can be toxic, plastic choking hazards, and pentobarbital, which is a euthanasia drug. So again, cats in the wild eat fresh, raw prey. Their system is designed to handle a little bit of bacteria, but cats cannot handle excessive levels of fat-soluble vitamins that are toxic. Cats cannot handle plastic choking hazards, and cats definitely cannot handle a euthanasia drug. Your next concern when it comes to raw versus wet cat food is probably going to be the cost. This ground duck wet chub is actually 56 cents an ounce. The wet canned food is 60 cents an ounce on sale. With the regular price, it's 65 cents an ounce. So it is very similar in price. However, you also have to look at how much you actually have to feed your cat. So for example, this wet canned food suggests to feed about 6.8 ounces per day for a 10-pound cat. But if you were feeding raw to that same 10-pound cat, you would feed around 3.2 ounces of food. So you're basically feeding double the amount of wet food than you would raw. Because as I mentioned, wet food is cooked. There's a lot of ingredients that the cats can't use. So you have to feed more of it for it to actually be nutritious. Whereas raw, it contains fresh vital nutrients that your cat is designed to digest. There's no fillers, nothing that's unnecessary, so your cat's more likely to utilize those nutrients and doesn't need to eat as much. For example, Jericho weighs about 10.5 pounds and I was feeding him 3.5 ounces. Now I'm slowly decreasing to 3.2 ounces so that he can lose a little bit of weight and weigh 10 pounds instead of 10.5. So if we do the math with raw, with this specific ground chub, you would spend about $1.79 per day or $654 per year. Whereas with wet food, you would be spending $4.08 per day or $1,489 a year. Let me know in the comments if you knew that you could save so much money feeding your cat raw instead of wet food. Now, you might also spend money on supplements and shipping, but you're saving so much money compared to wet food on the actual food that you'll definitely have plenty of money to spend on shipping, tax, and also supplements. Another concern that you might have when it comes to raw cat food versus wet cat food is, will my cat even eat it? Half of my mom's cats went for raw first compared to wet food. Ash and Charlie both went for raw food first, and they also had seconds and completely just disregarded their wet food and didn't even eat the wet food. Gracie went for wet food first, but as soon as she started licking and eating the raw, she completely ditched the wet food, didn't eat the wet food at all, and finished and licked her plate clean on the raw side, and she also had seconds. And even though Griffin didn't go for raw first, he finished his wet food, and then he went to raw and still finished the raw. So none of them rejected raw food completely, and 3 out of 4 of them did reject their wet food. All 4 of these cats used to eat dry food. In fact, Gracie used to beg for dry food and completely refused anything else. It's all about making small baby changes. Even if you have to go from kibble to wet food to raw food, just take baby steps and remember your long-term goal. Now, your next concern might be, is the work even worth it? You might think, oh, this sounds like a lot of work, transitioning from dry food to wet food, then to raw food. Is it even worth it? Well, as I mentioned, raw food is bioavailable, it's fresh, it has lots of energy, you're going to save money, and your cat can also lose weight, and it can also help your cat have more energy, less stinky litter boxes, which is a great pro for you. For example, Jericho, Hugo's poop, my best friend was sitting on the couch right next to him, and I said, oh, do you mind? I have to scoop the litter box. Jericho just went to the bathroom, and she said, I didn't even know he went. So if your cat is healthier, that means that you're gonna have fewer vet visits, which means you're going to be spending less time going to the vet, less frustration and less stress for both you and your cat. And a con here specifically to this brand Instinct is that they recently changed their formula, and a lot of the reviews on their website say, why did you change the formula? Now my cats won't eat it. So you may end up having to transition your cat to new food anyway out of nowhere. At least if you make the decision to switch your cat to raw, you have control of the situation. You decided to change your cat to raw, and you likely already have a plan in place to switch your cat to raw, rather than just out of nowhere, your cat decides he doesn't want to eat and you're kind of stuck because you don't have anything else to feed your cat. Further, if you make your cat's food at home with raw meat and a raw food premix, it's very easy, and it's still going to be better than feeding your cat wet canned food, because the raw food premix might have some whole foods and it might also have some synthetic nutrients, but when you're feeding canned food, these synthetic nutrients are already in there, at least with the raw and the premix. Yes, it's not ideal and feeding your cat whole prey or prey model raw, but it's still a step in the right direction, and it's easy for you. Because I'm sure a lot of you might think, well, plopping some wet cat food onto a plate is just easier for me, but you could spend about 10 minutes a week prepping your raw cat food at home. My mom's gonna start doing this because, as I'm sure you've noticed, Ash and Griffin are not at ideal weight, but they're eating canned food and a little bit of raw food here and there. So what my mom is going to start doing is using a raw food premix, because she does the same thing for the dogs as well. And then she's just going to buy the meat locally at the farm or at the grocery store. And if you're wondering which raw food premix to use, check out this video right over 𝐤𝐄𝐅. Thanks for watching.